I want to ask you about another virus, far more threatening to humanity, and it's this psychological pathogen that seems to have spread through the population. Animosity between the genders. All joking aside, I have wondered in my darker moments whether this could represent a real threat to the future of humanity. Just how much animosity there is. Could you speak to that for us, please?
I'm about to launch into a monologue, and you are not going to disrupt me. And if you do, there will be
like
consequences.
Alex in A Clockwork Orange. I've learned my lesson, sir. Let me go, sir.
You know, the spirals, you're going to listen. Your eyes are heavier and heavier.
I woke up and my bank account was empty.
Okay. So seriously, I spot six trends that I think had brought us to where we are. And yes, I fully agree with the anamnesis. Anamnesis in medicine means history, case history. I agree that there is animosity between the genders. I don't think any other word captures what's going on right now. I mean, we could say conflict. No, it's not. It's hatred. There's hatred. Absolute hatred. And I also don't think it's overgeneralization. Like you could say only 3% of, I don't think it's 3%. I think it's like something like 93%. It's bad. It's really bad out there. And it's bad in all age groups, which I think is a first. It's a first in human history.
That's like a pandemic. It spreads across the whole population, right?
Yeah, it's a good metaphor. Actually, I have a video comparing narcissism to a virus, but this gender problem is also a kind of virus. So it affects all age groups. So you can find women age 65 and 45 and 25 saying exactly the same thing about men, and vice versa. So it's, and I think there are 6 reasons. Of course, I can never come up with 2 reasons, because then I will not be able to monopolize the podcast. So I came up with 6 reasons.
And they will be delivered in 6 stages until you are dead.
Yeah, it's like a rocket, you know? Okay. The first one I coined a phrase to describe it. I call it invulnerability signaling. I think the 2 genders are signaling to each other. I don't need you. I'm self-sufficient. I'm autonomous. I have my goals and I'm focused on them. I don't have emotions. I'm uninvolved. It's like I'm not vulnerable.
Yeah.
So while in the past, until let's say, I could safely say 40 years ago, people were signaling to each other their vulnerabilities in order, for example, to have sex or to date or to. Today, people are signaling to each other their invulnerability. It's a kind of F-off message, F-off signal, you know. Yes. And this had become an ideology, an ossified ideology.
Yes.
Like it's cool to be invulnerable, you know.
Yes. You
cool
want
to be self-sufficient.
You want to be a boss bitch or an alpha male player, rigidly individualistic, highly narcissistic, and you want to be in a long-term relationship.
Yeah.
How?
Yeah. Well, at least you claim you want.
Yeah.
The second, and we'll come to that shortly. The second trend, I think, is what another scholar called gender vertigo. Gender vertigo is gender roles, classical gender roles, male, female, man, woman, have been abolished. They hadn't been modified. That's another mistake in the literature. It's not that gender roles had been modified. They had been absolutely abolished. There are no gender roles left. And sexual scripts had also been abolished. So today you don't know what it means to be a man, and you don't know what it means to be a man while you're dating. You don't even know what it means to be a man while you're having sex. There are no sexual scripts. There are no dating scripts. There are no gender roles. There are no guidelines. And this creates enormous confusions regarding what is appropriate and inappropriate behavior, and what is a code of conduct. Today, the situation is this. Every relationship has to be negotiated from scratch. My mother and father, my grandmother and grandfather, when they had met and were on the way to becoming a couple, unfortunately for me, when they were in this process, they were guided. They were guided by codes. They were guided by gender roles. So they needed to go the last mile. They didn't need to embark on a 1,000-mile march. They just needed to traverse the last mile. Today, if you start a new relationship, you have to negotiate everything. You have to negotiate what it is to be a man, what it is to be a woman, what is acceptable behavior, what's not acceptable behavior, what constitutes cheating, what constitutes, everything has to be negotiated from scratch in every single relationship. Now, this is destructive. It creates friction, and it's
exhausting.
Exhausting, bloody exhausting. You took the word out of my mouth, give it back to me. It's exhausting. And so it creates ultimately atomization. People give up. People are fucking tired, They don't want to do this anymore.
People give up. People like this guy.
No, I'm talking about human beings. People. Sorry, Richard. You've been exposed. You've been exposed. So they just give up. And there's a massive process of automation. In the year 2000, the year 2016 was the first year when a majority of women and a majority of men didn't have a single contact with the other sex, with the exception of pizza delivery boy. I mean,
what year was that?
2016.
2016, God.
There was the first year that majority of women and majority of men in the West didn't have a single meaningful contact with a member of the opposite sex. So there's total atomization. Now, the next trend is what is called the stalled revolution. Stalled revolution is not my term, it's a clinical term. Stalled revolution means that women describe themselves more and more using traditional masculine terms. So now we have a situation where women use every 7 out of 8 self-descriptive words are traditional masculine words. That's women. So we have created what I call unigender. There's a single masculine gender. Femininity had been abolished. There are males with penises and males with vaginas, but we're all masculine. This is unigender. Women are breadwinners. Women have surpassed men in a variety of areas. Women are more educated than men, etc., etc. So women had become men and aspired to be men, aspired to be actually narcissistic and psychopathic men. So there is a convergence of in the species. There's a convergence between men and women, and the politically correct media, mainstream media, adores this uniformity. I mean, embellishes it and promotes it. So today you have the idiotic, moronic phrase, pregnant people. The CNN, I'm kidding you not, the CNN and the New York Times no longer use the word pregnant women. It's pregnant people. It's like saying people with testicles. Not men, God forbid, people with testicles. And they're saying pregnant women, pregnant people, like we are all people. We are not men, we are not women, we are people. And some of us mysteriously get pregnant, but we're all people. This is shocking. This is shocking. Eliminating this beautiful difference between the genders, the source, the engine of attraction, the engine of sexuality, the engine of fecundity and fertility and procreation and recreation. Eliminating this had made us so much poorer, so much poorer. We are utterly impoverished, utterly impoverished. If you have something to say, you have my permission to say it from time to time. Just don't overdo it, please.
I'll keep it short. The point you made earlier about gender roles being abolished, I just want to support that by saying the gender roles are now illegal. They're effectively criminalized. So of course they're abolished. They're not modified. You're 100% right. If you try to suggest a gender role for a man or a woman, as a man or a woman, you're wrong. You could be trans, you can be gay, but if you suggest a man or a woman, if you suggest anybody has a gender-based role, it's essentially a thought crime. It's a thought. So absolutely, it's abolished.
It's abolished. Abolished. The concept of gender had been abolished. Gradually, the concept of sex is abolished via sex fluidity. So we have sexual fluidity. Transgender. You mentioned transgendered and transsexual people. They do have their innate experience of not belonging to the biological sex. And there's no reason for them not to act on this innate feeling and change sex. And that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about gender fluidity and sex fluidity as an ideology, negating the biological sex and the social cultural gender as patriarchal, evil, malevolent constructs intended to enslave women and so on and so forth. It's the ideological crust above all these changes that renders us stultified and ultimately nullified, probably. So this is fluidity. The next trend, I think, is what I call defiant agency. So this big brouhaha about being agentic. You know, you need to reacquire agency. You need to be self-efficacious, and of course that's healthy. Agency and self-efficacy are healthy. They're markers of mental health. But they had been imbued with aggression, and they went from assertiveness to defiance, reckless defiance. So now people display their agency or their self-efficacy by trampling on other people, by acting recklessly, by being violent and aggressive, by becoming abusive. This is a new agentic men and women, you know. Oh, sorry, people. These are the new agentic people, men and women. They will delete this video. Horrible. I mean, it became like the N-word, you know.
Yes.
Men, women, like the N-word.
Yes.
You're not supposed to say the N-word. So benign discourses, because there's always been a healthy tension between men and women. There's always been a discourse between genders, and these were benign discourses. At least, let's say, in the last 100 years or 150 years, they were benign discourses. Prior to that, some of the discourses were not so benign. Women were really mistreated and enslaved and so on. There's no question about this. But in the last 150 years, it's no longer true. All intergender discourse has been essentially benign and constructive. How do I know? Women are far more liberated and emancipated. Had the discourse been malevolent and malignant, women would not have been where they are today. So it seems that men had participated in the discourse in good faith.
Yes.
Judging by the outcomes, the discourse had been a good faith discourse.
Yeah.
And
had it not been, we wouldn't be where we are today. I 100%.
Yes, women would not be where they are today.
Yeah, sorry, women wouldn't be. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, women. No, people would not be.
People
Pregnant
with
would never
vaginas.
be where they are today. Pregnant people would never be where they are today. So the intergender dialogue had been corrupted and contaminated, became malignant, owing to this defiance in lieu of agency. And finally, yes, there is such a thing. Finally, even in my monologues, they come to an end. You'll have to carry me on a stretcher before I finish. No
You have
way.
to carry the audience on some stretches.
Bring on the stretchers. Yes. So the last thing I want to point to, and I really am curious to hear your point of view. Seriously, I mean it. I mean, because I've seen some of your videos, and there were great insights there. So I'm very,
Thank you.
There was meant as an insult. So, you know, so the last trend, I think, is what I call the enshrined double standard. Now, there's been always a double standard. Women who behave in a certain way sexually were sluts. Men who behave the same way were studs. We all know this. I mean, this is a double standard. But what happened is an amazing thing. Women had adopted the male double standard. Women tried to conform to male stereotypes of sexually emancipated women. Because if you ask chauvinistic males, what do you think about sexually emancipated women? They will say, oh, they're sluts. And now there's slight slut pride. Like, women are proud to be sluts, but they don't realize that to be a slut is to conform to the most extreme chauvinistic male stereotype. If you're proud to be a slut, you are a chauvinistic man's wettest dream.
Yes.
You conform to his worldview. So claims of empowerment, women claim to be empowered. But they are multiple studies, for example, by Lisa Wade, by Kerry Cohen, that demonstrate that the women who claim to be empowered the most, they are the women who had adopted and internalized and introjected the double standard.
Yeah.
For example, these women told the researchers, I've had like 40 sexual partners, but don't tell anyone because it's shameful.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So they are emancipated, they're liberated, they are empowered under the carpet, secretly, surreptitiously.
Yes.
Why?
Yes.
Because men will think badly of them.
Yes.
They had adopted the male double standard, and this duality, this self-denial, this self-deception, I think is driving the genders apart.
Right.
Because women are conforming to specific male stereotypes, and the majority of men find this very off-putting. Because the majority of men are not chauvinistic, psychopathic, narcissistic men.
Yeah.
And women are trying to conform to the stereotypes and to the expectations of chauvinistic, psychopathic, narcissistic men. So the majority of men are beginning to find women disgusting, repulsive, and off-putting.
Yep. Yep.
I mean,
100%.
I never mince words. I mean women, but not words. So, so there is a break, a schism between the genders, because women are acting the part that actually the vast majority of men don't want them to act. And men are acting the part that now women are rejecting because it doesn't sit well with the alpha male, narcissistic, chauvinistic, psychopathic kind of guy, you know, the bad guy.
Yes.
So women, because they are rejecting themselves, because when you internalize as a woman, when you internalize this point of view, you actually introject the double standard. When you say, I'm a slut, supposedly it's proud, but actually deep inside you feel shame. So this creates self-harming and self-trashing behaviors. The incidence of sexual self-trashing and other forms of self-harming among women is much, much higher than 40 or 30 or 20 years ago. For example, the incidence of depression among teenage women under the age of 18, and then later in later studies under the age of 25, the incidence of depression is up, hold your breath, up 500%.
Jesus Christ.
Anxiety disorders among teenage women is up, are up more than 350%. These are studies by Twenge and Campbell, and these are studies that terminated in 2008 and 2018. So these are old studies. These are like 3-4-year-old studies, the newest ones. I think the situation is much, much worse now.
Yeah.
Why is that? It's long before COVID.
Yeah.
The influence of social media, of course, but also I think the fact that women had internalized male chauvinistic, psychopathic, narcissistic stereotype, and they feel bad with it. They don't feel, they feel ego dystonic. They feel ashamed. They feel guilty. They act this way because they're expected to act this way because they are empowered.
Yeah.
But deep inside, it sucks.
Yes.
They feel bad. They feel they are not themselves. They feel they are acting. It's a part.
Yes. Yes.
And I think that's self-harming and self-trashing. And anyone who has had sex or a date with a young woman lately would confirm that. It's highly politically incorrect to say this, but it's very true.
It is what it is. And I've had the few girls I have dated in the last couple of years, 2 of the 3 admitted exactly what you said to me over time, slowly and in their own words, but that they felt like they were compelled to have sex. They just felt tremendous cultural pressure to be promiscuous and to relate that promiscuity to strength. It was so stereotypical. One girl even showed me a book that she bought that was written. It was written in a foreign language. Only Good Girls Cry, and it was to teach you how to be a bad girl. And she's like, I bought this book because my friends recommended the book, and I'm like, you know, you don't have to do that. What I would say is, when I was 28, I wanted a high notch count. I was quite psychopathic. I was practically homeless. I was doing drugs. I was a pretty naughty boy. This would be my wonderland. This version of feminism. These girls say it's feminism. And I'm like, well, I studied feminism at university. It doesn't look like feminism to me. This is Wonderland. You take a girl on one date, she will have sex with you that night. Not just sex. I know this is horrible. It's graphic. Some people will be triggered, whatever. They will do everything. They will do anything with you now.
Absolutely.
But a girl previously, I would have had to have been with her for a year before she'd even talk about it. First date or second date.
Yeah, you're right. You were the one who raised the specter that this may be a form of self-harming. In our correspondence, you wrote this to me.
Yes.
I also mentioned it in my videos. Yes, absolutely. I fully agree. It's a form of self-trashing and self-harming, which is it's self-punishment for not being you, for succumbing, for giving in, for falsifying yourself. You know, I'm not saying that all women are Madonnas or all women are whores, or it's not what I'm saying. It's what
that's such a cheap riposte. It's such a cheap. Everybody says, "Oh, you just have a Madonna whore complex." Okay, so don't think about what's being said.
And that's
just
not what
throw
I'm
it
saying.
Away. Yeah,
I'm actually the greatest feminist. I'm saying women should free themselves of the male gaze. The male gaze. What they did instead, they adopted the gaze of the psychopathic, narcissistic male, rather than the gaze of the majority of us, or majority of you, who are not psychopathic and narcissistic and so on. So they've alienated something like 90% of the male population.
Yes.
And they are stuck with these 10%.
But so what you were saying there, just to back that, the guys in the manosphere, the red pill community, the pickup community, they do these YouTube videos and they keep reporting that on Tinder, the women are only getting with 8 to 10% of the men that are there. So that like we have hard data that backs this. There's actual statistical data that suggests roughly, 8 to 10% of the men and the rest ignored. And those 8 to 10% of men need to have certain signals. They need to be in a certain category, and they have a high degree of mate selection. And what they do with that is they don't choose to be monogamous. They choose to mate with multiple women. And
why would they choose to be monogamous? Monogamy is a cost.
Yes.
Why would you pay anything for something you get free? It's not nice to say, but women were trading sex. Women were trading sex for stability, longevity of relationships, and child rearing. That was a deal. And now they're giving it free.
Yes.
They're giving it free. It's insane on their part. Utterly
It really
insane.
is. It's totally self-destructive.
Yeah.
And they're calling it self-empowerment. And I'm like, this is the most disempowering thing you could do. And you're like, if I was that same guy who just wanted to be as promiscuous as possible, it's never been easier. I don't even have to leave. I don't have to go to a bar. I pull out an app and I'll find girls within a 5-mile radius. And it's straight. If you don't approach them sexually straight away and say, you're really fit and I like your boot, they have a problem. They're like, what's wrong with you? Like, why are you not? You should be coming on to me sexually immediately. And if you don't, oh, you're a simp, you're a beta, I'm not interested. It's, as you say, totally self-destructive. I watched a video. This, again, will really annoy people. But I watched a video of yours where you said, well, think about the value of what you're doing. Like, if we perform a specific sex act, and that's between me and you, there's a difference if we've only done it with each other. If you've done it with 3 other people, that's different. If you've done it with 30 other people, 300 other people, we are reducing the value of what we're doing. Even as a man, if you know that I've done this for 300 other women, you're not going to value, you're going to feel a certain way. I know that men and women are different, but you are going to feel a certain way about that because it makes it less special. Then I don't have as much to offer. What I offer is not so special, it's pedestrian. There's 20 women on my street who've experienced what you just experienced.
Anything that is commodified is devalued. Anything that is commodified is devalued. So yes, I think another issue is that women feel pressured into engaging in sex acts, which in the past used to be reserved for intimate partners. I mean, one night stands have been around since biblical times, I assume. But still, until very recently, women and men had maintained a kind of inventory. These acts I'm doing with strangers, and these acts I reserve for intimate partners. I never kiss with strangers. I never lick strangers certain parts of anatomy. I mean, there are some things I never do with a stranger. And I do them only with intimate partners so that my intimate partner can feel special.
Yeah.
And now this is gone.
Yeah.
The specialness is gone, the mystery, I mean, it's so sad. It's especially sad for people my age,
Yeah.
because I had witnessed and experienced it before.
Yeah.
And now it's gone. Now it's gone, you know?
I'm old enough to have seen the cost, because when I was dating when I was 18, that's 1996, and I would say the dating scene has changed tremendously, like attitudes between men and women. As a man now, though I can have access to a woman's body and to her sexually, I won't get close to her mind, because I am the enemy, and I am simply a cutout avatar of an evil man. It doesn't matter what I do, doesn't matter what I say, doesn't matter. There's zero trust. It can take years to get any degree of trust now, because it's just, like you said, it's ideological. And it's like Gad Saad comes up with that idea of these ideological infections that function like parasites, gets into the mind like a virus, and you can't fight it. There's that you mentioned in one of the six things that push the genders apart. You said something about the communication had become hostile, it become malignant, the assumptions in
the dialogue, the intergender dialogue.
The intergender dialogue. You can't dialogue. You can only dialogue as their cutout avatar of a male, and everything outside of that, well, you'll just get like a bewildered look, like what is this talking dildo? Like, what's he trying to talk to me about?
Yeah, it's on the surface. Everything is kept on the surface, and this harks back to the first trend, invulnerability signaling.
Yes.
If you let anyone dip inside, they're going to see your vulnerabilities. And you don't want them to see your vulnerabilities, because they can hurt you, and they're going to hurt you. It's for sure they're going to hurt you. I mean, that's a given. So you're not going to let them hurt you. You're not going to let them in. Well, except in one sense. So it's a bad situation. Now there are new trends developing which are not captured by the manosphere, or actually wrongly captured by the manosphere. For example, starting a few years ago, majority of women had renounced men psychologically, in the sense that they now are actually looking for what the manosphere called beta. Majority of women since 2018, and in studies and so on and so forth, are actually selecting beta males, to use the manosphere's phraseology.
Sure.
Using beta males, or selecting beta males, even for one-night stands, because women had adopted narcissistic and psychopathic male role models, and so now they want to feel superior. They want to feel in control. So we have studies, quite a few. I have a bibliography on my various YouTube videos. We have recent studies that show that women actually, there's been a shift in preference for the first time in human history. There's been a shift of preference from alpha successful winners to beta losers. Women now are seeking beta losers to feel superior and good, and so on. It's pretty shocking. And of course, the manosphere guys are denying this, but they're not updated. They're simply not updated.
No, they stick with their rigid ideology of hypergamy. She's always going to choose an alpha over you.
That's no longer true, actually.
I can see multiple examples of girls not doing that.
Professional women who are self-sufficient economically and so on, they actually seek beta males that they can kind of subjugate at home and kind of rule over, and
and bully.
Dildos, essentially. So the women had adopted narcissistic and psychopathic male role models rather than good, healthy, constructive male role models. I don't know why they should seek male role models at all, but they chose the wrong ones, definitely.
Yes.
It's a very sad scene.
What do you see? I was just going to ask you there, if there was a solution, what do you think the solution would look like?
I think same-sex relationships are going to explode, because
a solution that I would enjoy, Sam.
I mean, why would you go for a poor imitation if you can have the original? Yeah.
So I don't want a woman who's a crap version of a man. I may as well just get a real man.
Yeah, go get a real man. I'm not kidding. Same with women, by the way. Same with women. I mean, why would you go for an effeminate
Or imitation of a
pseudo
woman.
feminine men. I mean, just
Yeah.
go for a woman. So I think there will be absolutely an explosion of same-sex relationships and sexuality.
Mm.
I think there is going to be a lot more atomization. So there will be, and we are already seeing this. For example, the frequency of sex and dating among people younger than 35, and especially among people younger than 25, is much lower than among their parents' generation and their grandparents' generation. So, no, people under the age of 25 date far less and have sex far fewer times than their parents and their grandparents. We're already seeing this. Dating, just to give you a number to blow your mind, dating had declined within 10 years by 60%. That's 60 within 10 years. By the way, hookups are on the decline even hookups. I have a video on hookups where there's a survey of literature, which supports everything I'm saying here. But so we are seeing a situation where people withdraw from any contact with other people, even of the opposite sex, if they are heterosexual.
Well, it makes sense because it's just painful. It's just a punitive experience. Dating
I would
now
even say,
is just...
even if it's not painful, it's always frustrating.
Yes, yes. It's exasperating. Yeah, okay. So baseline, you're going to be exasperated. You're not really going to get what you're looking for.
Yeah.
And if you push further into the lobster pot, then you'll get really hurt. So it's exasperation all the way to hurt.
If you signal vulnerability, if you open up, if you become vulnerable, you'll get hurt. And otherwise, you will have a supercilious, superficial, on the surface relationship, which will end in frustration. Because whatever your expectations are, they're not going to be met. So people have given up on each other. They've given up on each other, or they gravitate into same-sex relationships or experimental sex relationships. So we have a surge, for example, in swinging, open relationships, open marriages, and so on and so forth. Already 3% of the population identify as open relationships and open marriage. 3% sounds small number, but it's a gigantic leap.
That's
from the 1950s. Enormous. So, and people are going to give up on each other. I think ultimately we will all be ensconced and cocooned in our small apartments or big apartments or whatever. And we're going to interact digitally, and we're going to find sex substitutes. So men had already found sex substitute. The consumption of pornography is through the roof, 5 times higher than only 5 years ago. There's a book called The Billion Wicked Thoughts, which documents this phenomenon. So pornography by now is definitely the main substitute to 3D sex, as far as men are concerned. So men consider now pornography to be a full substitute, full-fledged substitute to the real thing. Women are not there yet, although they're gravitating towards pornography. I think women will need more. So I don't know, sex dolls or whatever, but or maybe digital sex with tactile input or something.
There was a girl I was seeing, and she told me that 3 years previous, from the ages of 21 to 24, she sustained a sex-only relationship with a guy, and she said it was my friends with benefits relationship, and I was really sad, and she couldn't understand. She couldn't understand my sadness. I'm like, you're 21. And you're engaging it because it takes a degree of cynicism. No, I'm not shaming anybody who's in a friends with benefits. That's fine. But 21 for 3 years. And I was like, didn't you catch feelings? She was like, he would catch feelings. Then I would push him away. Then I would catch feelings and he would push me away. I was like, that's a recipe for trauma. You're not going to walk away from that, bouncing and happy and full of joyful. You're both going to walk away feeling pretty hurt by that. We all make mistakes. I made terrible mistakes in my 20s, but am I getting old? I mean, that sounds quite cynical that it was sustained for so long for a 21-year-old. What do you think about that?
She gave up.
Yeah.
She gave up on any alternative, obviously.
Yeah.
And she settled for what she could get. Lisa Wade, in her studies, describes conversations with young girls between the ages of 15 and 30. And she describes these young women say the worst thing you can do is show emotions. You should never cling. You should never ever write to your sex partner after the first sex, after the first one night stand. You know, they mock other girls who do this. They say that it's a common practice for men to send them SMSs or text messages saying, "Don't call me again, don't contact me again. It was a one-time thing." They say that there's a code of behavior where both sides intentionally get drunk so that they can blame the drink and say, there was nothing there. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't even sexual. We were just drunk. So drink had become a kind of alibi. Drinking had become a kind of alibi. It's not me, it's the alcohol or whatever. So there's a whole subculture which encompasses, according to Lisa Wade, about 81% of young women. Now, Lisa Wade is the preeminent scholar in the field. So she thinks about 4/5 of young women adhere to this code, which is a code of rejection, a code of alienation, a code of cold detachment, a code of cynicism, and a code of what I call signaling invulnerability. I'm not interested in you. I have no emotion towards you. I'm not even sexually attracted to you. I was bloody drunk, you know? Don't ever call me. Don't dare to write to me. You clingy, needy, codependent, disgusting amoeba, you know? And this is the intergender dialogue among the young. It's not 8%, it's 81%.
What you're describing actually clears up some of my bewilderment over the last few years, because I think I've dipped in and out of that culture, but without consent. I didn't know. So I'd have these bewildering experiences and all the coordinates were off. And in all three cases, when I followed up and was like trying to take them out during the day and get to know them, they were completely confused, and repulsed at first. Like I was like, don't,
it's creepy. It's
don't
creepy.
You want to get to know me?
It's creepy. You want to date them after a one-night stand? What's wrong with you? You are sicker than I thought. You need cold therapy. Yeah, in Zurich. Come to Switzerland.
That's where the solution will be, in Switzerland.
The final solution. What do you mean the solution?
The final solution.
Final solution.
But now that you've said it's kind of like it's almost like a subculture. That explains how I felt. I was like, I've dipped into it because it felt like a cult, or I just didn't know the rules. So I was like dipping in. I'd do what I've been doing since 1995 or whatever. And then I'd be looked at like, what the bloody hell's wrong with this guy? What's wrong with you trying to share things with me and get to know me? It's really strange.
Another phenomenon is self-pornography. So growing numbers of mainly women, but also men, generate pornography and just give it out. So they have live cams, not for money, exhibitionistic. So they have live cams, and they generate self-pornography and put it out. We're talking millions. And so this is one phenomenon. And self-pornography is a substitute for a connection. It's a temporary kind of thing. You know, I've had a connection for a few minutes. There is an self-objectification going on a mass scale.
Thank you for saying that, because I don't think the feminists know that. They say, well, men keep objectifying women. I'm like, see what women are doing to women. And it's not even other women doing it. They do it to themselves.
Yeah.
Aggressively. And very early on in the relationship, I'm being sent nudes. Yeah. And I'm like, nobody asked you for this.
Yeah.
And they're asking for me to reciprocate. And I'm like, there's absolutely no way I'm sending you a picture of him.
Sexting and camming. For example, masturbating with a stranger you have just met.
Yeah.
Is women masturbating with strangers they've just met is absolutely common. Absolutely common. I wouldn't say it's an outlier. I think it's standard behavior. Sexting is definitely common, like sending texts or photos. But camming is becoming more and more prevalent. So today, a woman who refuses to masturbate to you on camera, you know, she needs help. Something's wrong with her.
I feel like that naive codependent again.
So here's the thing. This empowerment thing is all male dictated and male oriented.
100%.
It's ironical.
It's crazy.
It's mind-blowing. It's a male's wonderland.
It is. It's everything that I would have wanted as a young, horny man. Women on demand. They think I don't have to tell them. They do it, and they're proud of doing it.
Yeah.
No guilt, no pressure, no effort. It's great. Fantastic.
And you can't, when you try to explain it to women. I've given recently lectures to COVID-free, vaccinated women, of course. So when you try to explain this to women, they get really furious at you.
Yes, I know.
Tell them,
they'll be furious in the comments here.
Yeah, I mean, don't you see what you're doing? You are converting yourself into a commodity. You're objectifying yourself, and then you are giving yourself free to men who expect it fully of you because they have stereotypes of you, and then you're proud of it, and you have pride, slut pride month. I'm kidding you not. Slut pride parade. Go online.
Great. Well done, humanity. Well done. Our future is rosy.
Yeah.